Evening is being recorded. First order of business is the consent agenda. We have the town accountant's warrants, one-day special licenses for the AB United Way on the 19th of November from 7 to 11 on the old road to 9 Acre Corner, Thoreau on 11/19 on 37 Lexington Road, an all alcohol event on Salt Box Farm on October 28th, November 5th, and November 12th. At various times, 6 to 10 on the 28th, 5 to 9 on the 5th, and 4 to 9 on the 12th at 40 Westford Road. Sunday entertainment licenses, all for Concord players, all from 2 to 5 p.m. on Walden Street on the 13th of November, the 19th of February, the 30th of April, and the 7th of May. That's planning. So that's the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Town manager's report. Mr. Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We received notification that the MBTA is proposing to install 4 monopoles, 74 feet in height, in different locations along the railroad right-of-way. In order to, I think, improve wireless communication on the system. The T is exempt from local zoning, but I think they're seeking the input from residents, particularly in historic areas. So there was a public notice in the paper, so and comment was sought. Public Works Department reminds folks that there's a no overnight parking restriction in place in Concord from November 1st till March 31st. So cars are not allowed to park on the public streets or in public parking lots overnight beginning on November 1st. And I think we'll send out a reminder with social media and that sort of thing. The town clerk was notified that her office will be receiving an award for early voting preparation. The Secretary of State's and Common Cause challenged town clerks and town officials to help implement early voting in this presidential election in order to increase participation and make it a little easier for people who maybe have busy lives to vote. And the town clerk, Concord's town clerk's office will be receiving an award on Wednesday as one of the communities successfully implementing the early voting requirement that was new this year.
Just add that Alice and Steve are both going to attend that ceremony for the board.
That's great. And just a reminder that early voting starts for the November 8th election on October 24th. So folks can turn out early.
They have it sometimes early morning and also sometimes in the evening for those who it's not convenient for the 9 to 5. So
and
the
it's,
hours are very convenient.
And it's in the townhouse. So it's a town clerk's office in the townhouse. Folks can come and vote early for this
Boxes
presidential.
are downstairs.
And town clerk Anita Techley, who was on an extended medical leave, ended that leave today and started working part-time in her office beginning today. So it's good to have Anita back, particularly as the election approaches. The parking management plan implementation started. You may have seen the meters being changed out, both in West Concord and Concord Center. We think it will take about 2 weeks to change out all the old meters, put in the new meters that accept credit cards and phone payment by phone, and to stripe additional parking spaces, particularly on Main Street near Concord Academy. So that work should be wrapped up in about 2 weeks. And then lastly, the demolition of the property at 91 Sudbury Road is still being worked on. There's apparently some asbestos in the cellar related to the heating system, and that has to be abated before the building can be demolished. So as I understand it, the assistant building commissioner is continuing to work on that. I don't have a date yet for the demolition, but bids were solicited from contractors, and the process is moving forward. That's all I have.
Questions from the town manager? I just have one is on the property on Sudbury Road in Devons. Is there a landscape person that's going to be part of the demolition activity? I just noted that there is a lot of shrubbery that has grown up around there, but there are also some quite important looking and large specimen-like trees, and I know they'll probably have to clear an area to get a lot of junk out there. I just hope some landscape kind of person
the
Saves that tree or something.
landscape architect, so I can ask if she would identify any plants that
There's a lot.
should be saved. Our obligation under the statute is to leave, not have the cellar hole vacant, but to leave it at level grade.
Well, it's just a matter of they're going to have to cut a lot of stuff down just to be able to get stuff out of there.
They will.
They're going to have to block the street, Devon's, or?
That isn't clear. I haven't seen the plan. I thought that might be necessary for at least a day to have access to work within the street, the right of way, in order to have a dumpster and vehicles in a crane and that sort of thing. But I haven't seen the actual final demolition plan.
And I'm sure the whole town, along with us, are delighted and welcome Anita back, and thank Pat for the great job she did. And we'll have we'll have Anita's reinstallation, I don't know what it's called, as town clerk on our agenda on our 31st meeting,
On the
correct?
31st. Great.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Colonial Inn. A request to remove seasonal seating restrictions at the Colonial Inn. This was, as I told you folks, this was originally on our consent calendar, but I thought it would be just a good idea to move it off so we could explain why this is occurring. It's not so much being controversial. I just thought it would be a good thing. So I wonder if you could do that for us.
Just by way of background, to indicate that some years ago, when the Colonial Inn was interested in having outdoor seating, they approached the Board of Appeals to ask for this specific authorization for seasonal outdoor seating. At the time, their request was to have the seating end on November 1st and begin again on March 31st. The Board of Appeals granted that approval some years ago. However, since that time, they found that even into November, there's interest in sitting outside if the day is comfortable. So the Colonial Inn approached the Board of Appeals and was granted permission to remove those seasonal restrictions. So the Board of Appeals no longer has any limitation calendar-wise on the use of the outdoor seating, but the liquor license issued by the Select Board must be revised as well.
So this just brings the liquor license then into compliance with the new
Board of Appeals, decision.
There's never been a safety issue regarding sort of people coming off of the porch, maybe having had an extra drink.
No, we haven't heard anything about, and the police chief was, comfortable that this would not be a problem.
Good.
Well, with days like this week, I can see why we'd want to extend it.
Absolutely.
And the application is in order, Andrew?
Yes, I've checked with the special permit that was just recently granted, and it matches up with the license that will be amended tonight.
Just want to make sure also, I know on some of the documentation we received, Ms. Kaufman and I were on the ZBA granting the special permit back in the day. Is that okay? We can vote on
Oh,
this
yes,
item?
yeah, I don't see any
Just
problem.
wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Do you have any comments that you'd like to make? All right, I'd be happy to entertain a motion then.
I move to amend the common victualer's license of Colonial Inn 1 Corp., doing business as the Colonial Inn at 48 Monument Square, to remove the seasonal outdoor seating restriction, quote, only between April 1st and October 31st, end quote, allowing 64 seats to be on the porch at any time as weather allows. At no time should the maximum seating capacity of 304 be exceeded when using the following areas: Merchants Row, Middlesex, Alcott, Thoreau, Prescott, Cafe, Forge, and tap rooms, and the front porch.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adopted unanimously. Thank you very much. The request to increase the hours at Michael's Restaurant is going to be postponed until the 31st. The owner, excuse me,
November 14th.
I'm sorry, November 14th. The owner had a family matter, I think, to attend to, so that'll be on our agenda later. That means Mr. Wedge and the umbrella. And we see a familiar face accompanying him. So for the record, please identify yourselves.
Thank you. I'm Jerry Wedge from the Executive Director of the Umbrella Community Arts Center. I'm here with Elise Woodward, who is the chair of our building committee, and I'm also here with Allie Cusin, who's the chair of our board. And I'm happy to see that we have some of our neighbors with us.
It's nice to see you, and Ms. Woodward, it's always great to have you back amongst us.
Thank you.
Please,
I brought some of our most recent publication. Would it be appropriate to pass those around?
absolutely.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2. And I can read the rest here. So, thank you for having us. I realized a minute ago how long it's been since I've been here because everyone's on their devices and my notes are still on paper. So, apologize for that. We're an arts organization and we hold on to that tactile quality of things. I wanted to give you just a brief update for maybe people that don't know what the umbrella is all about, some of our history and some of the programming we do, give a little bit of history leading up to the lease and some of the work that we've done, and then ask Elise to take you through the planning that we've done to date. So if that sounds good, I'll just start. For those, maybe not around this table, but maybe some of those in the community who don't know what the umbrella does, is we are a community arts organization. We were established in 1983, and that was a time when the Emerson High School on 40 Stowe Street was somewhat undetermined what to do with the building. And I've heard anecdotally that the town was talking about selling it or tearing it down, whatever. They didn't have a major plan for it. So a group of artists got together. They established a 501c3. They came to the town. They got a town meeting approval to turn the building into an arts organization, and they got a 10-year lease at that point, I believe. They've been operating on 10-year leases for, I guess, 3 terms since then. We're now 33 years old. The group that established the organization, many of them are still around. They inherited this building that was in pretty deplorable shape. I hear of stalactites type things in the theater. Another art project, major art project. There was a lot of blood and sweat that went into bringing it up to a standard that people could use it. They organized the building so the top 2 floors were essentially artist studios, and the lower floor was primarily classrooms with some other studios, and the theater was used as an in-house production company. If we fast forward to today, well, a lot of work was done 30 years ago. We've done kind of incremental things, but there are a lot of things that haven't been addressed. And we're going to talk about some of those things that need to be done as we move forward. Our mission is to enrich lives and build a vibrant community through the arts. We do that through the administration of 5 major programs. So I'll just quickly go through those. We have a robust arts education program where we serve over 1,300 students a year, and that's youth and adults. We have 3 terms throughout the year and then a pretty vibrant summer program. Those are classes in pottery, figure drawing, painting, drawing, computer arts, whatever someone is interested in learning. A lot of the course catalog is in here, although it's somewhat outdated because we're in the middle of our fall semester now. Our Arts and Environment program, some of you know as Musketaquid, and that program has been producing the Earth Day parade and celebration every year for the last 26 years. They also do a lot more. They're really intent on connecting the community to nature through the arts. So some of you may have seen the Art Ramble that we organized in the town forest, where we juried in 19 artists who installed their work throughout the forest. I thought it was incredible.
Great.
And hopefully we'll be before you again someday to talk about a public art project. But that was just kind of the start of something like that. And I think that it was very well received by the community, and we're hoping that we can continue doing that kind of work. That program also, the Arts and Environment program, also is one of our major outreach programs to Lowell, where we've helped them organize Earth Day celebrations, and we're also working with Boys and Girls Clubs up there to get kids involved in arts and nature and other art programming for kids in Lowell. Our Performing Arts program is one of our more recent programs. We started it about 4 years ago with the intent of developing bold, daring, and innovative theater in Concord. We've had very good success in building that program. In the last cycle of awards that were announced this past summer, the Eastern Massachusetts Association of Community Theaters awarded our production of True West as Best Play of the Year. That's out of 120 productions that are juried by this. I have to say that 51 Walden and the Concord Players are right up there with us. They're winning great awards too. So what that shows me is that there's plenty of audience in Concord for great theater, and we're working to as much of that as we can. We also partner with the Concord Film Project, so you can come to our theater once a month and see great independent films, documentaries, that sort of thing. And if you were in town last Friday night and came by the Umbrella, you would have seen the lawn filled with concert goers. We had Sarah Bareilles in concert in our 350-seat theater, and it was absolutely incredible. We started this program about a year and a half ago. It's semi-fundraiser, semi-friend-raiser, really kind of a cultivation thing to get people to understand what we're doing and bring them into the Umbrella and see the potential there. We've had Lyle Lovett, we've had Bruce Hornsby, we had Sean Colvin and Steve Earle. And that's a program that we're hoping to continue. And most people who come to it say, why can't we do this every Friday night? Not the neighbors. But it is a way to build the vibrancy of the organization and show people that arts is an important component of any community. Our studio arts program, we have about 58 artists now, either with their own studio or share a studio. We have 50 studios in the building. And those artists are working every day independently. Some of them it's their livelihood. Some of them it's their retreat. We have two opportunities a year for artists to come, or for the community to come in and see what the artists do. They open their doors. We have open studios in April, where every artist is actually required by their lease to be there and open their doors and show the community what they're doing. And the other is Winter Market, where you can come and do all your shopping the first weekend of December at the Umbrella. And then the final program is our Arts Gallery, and we've been building that program up well as well over the last several years. 2 years ago, we opened up our expanded gallery, which was kind of our first baby step towards the master plan that we established in 2012. So those are our 5 basic programs. The intent is that we are trying to find touch points so every member of the community can find something that they're attracted to in the arts at the Umbrella, whether it's taking a class or visiting with a studio artist or coming to a gallery exhibition or coming to the theater. And we're getting good feedback from the community that not everybody wants to take a pottery class, but they might want to come see a show. So we feel that that's working and our programs are growing and expanding. So let me give a little bit of history. In 2008, long before I got there, the board, in their wisdom, realized that they should do a feasibility study because it was apparent that the building wasn't able to stay in that condition. So they hired OMR Architects in 2008. They did a feasibility study that identified all the work that was required to bring the building up to code, to make it accessible, things like roof repairs, boiler replacements, sprinkler systems, hazardous material abatement, that sort of thing. The price tag on that was $10 million. So that's what's kind of started the snowball of, well, if we're going to be asking for $10 million from donors, we need a longer-term lease, and they need some security that their donation is going to go towards something long-standing. So we were successful in town meeting, getting the approval for a longer-term lease and doing all the application for that. We were also, just lost my train of thought. We got the lease and
That was in 2012.
That was in 2000.
The lease was
Oh, yeah. The lease was signed in February 2012. What the lease required was the basic terms that we'd always had, the $1 a year, which many people have offered to contribute to. We're also required to maintain the building. So that means paying for oil and paying for upkeep, the lawn mowing, the snow plowing, the trash removal, all that. So the $1 a year is a little bit of a fallacy. It's not quite that. It's a considerable amount for a nonprofit. In addition to all that, the lease requires us to invest at least $6 million in the facility. And it goes on to stipulate that $6 million we're required to raise it within the first 5 years of the lease and then invest it within the next 5 years of the lease. So 10 years into our lease, we're expected to have the improvements made to the building. So then, starting in 2012, after the lease was signed, we established a new master plan committee just to look at what would be required to accomplish that, starting effort and all of that. We decided that we needed fundraising documents and a master plan and a vision for the future. So we asked the master plan committee, which was established by the board, to look at two options. One is take the feasibility study that was done in 2008 and escalate the prices for us so we know what the $10 million project was. And secondly, to look at a project that might be a little bit more enticing than a patch and paint renovation. Considering once you're over $10 million, I mean, it's serious money and people are going to want something that's both they're interested in donating to and also is a big asset to the town. So what we found out was that the $10 million price tag from 2008 was now $11.5 million. And by instead of just doing a full renovation, if we looked at an option of moving all the studios to the front of the building, taking off the back of the building and rebuilding it for a classroom facility, an education facility, and a performing arts facility, the price tag ended up being $15 million, but there was a lot more interest in that. So in 2012, we're looking at a project that was $15 million. So some of the critical issues, that's just the snapshot of the history. I welcome anyone to come to the Umbrella and take a tour. That's probably the easiest way to understand what needs to be done. Some of the issues that we really need to address are, A, accessibility. If you've ever been to the building, you'll know you can't get in the front door without going up 3 steps or 4 steps. And then once you're in the building, you're faced with a huge staircase. You can either take you up 14 steps or down 5 steps. So if you're in a wheelchair, it's next to impossible to get in the building. Even if you're using a walker or if you're compromised with mobility, it's difficult to get into the front door of the building. So accessibility and in the bathrooms as well. We're grandfathered with our accessible toilet room, which is on the 3rd floor, which means you have to get in the elevator, go to the 3rd floor, and we have one accessible toilet room up there. So accessibility is a big issue, and our plans are addressing that fully. Code compliance as well in the new building. We'll bring it fully up to code, and as well as safety. I mean, there are conditions in the building where the floor is cracked, and we've patched it twice, and it cracks again, and it's a much bigger project than patching at this point. There's hazardous materials. We've done surveys. We've done 2 surveys now, so we think we've identified 85% of the material. Who knows? Probably not all of it, but the building will be fully abated. The building systems will be upgraded. Right now we have an oil-fired steam boiler. We're interested in some sort of sustainable building, and no engineer is going to ever recommend an oil-fired gas steam boiler for us. So things like that. There are just conditions where the infrastructure is crumbling, and we just can't do anything about it except try to cover over conditions that we have. The same with interior finishes. We have the calcimite ceilings in a lot of areas that are just peeling and you can't do anything with. Energy efficiency is a huge issue for us. You may know that we received a grant this year to replace or to restore the windows, which we're hopefully finishing up before the end of the month. To tighten up the windows, make them energy efficient in terms of insulated glass. And
that was a CPA.
That was CPA funds, right? And we've submitted our application for next year. We applied for half of it last year, and we're applying for the second half this year. And Elise might talk a little bit more about LEED and that sort of thing. And the other thing is just improving our program spaces. The programs that we have are great, and the spaces that we're producing them in are not necessarily great. So just to bring the program space up to meet the quality of the program is really important. And on top of that, we just feel that having a vibrant community arts center is a huge benefit to the town, and we want to do everything we can to make that happen. Having said that, I'd love to turn it over to Elise to fill you in on.
Okay, good, thanks. I'm going to talk for a minute here. I have some images on boards that we'll put on the easel in a moment. And maybe then I'll have to borrow Jane's microphone, as we talk. So the Umbrella established a building committee early in 2016, and the building committee had a number of meetings to discuss what the threshold would be for hiring an architect. So because this is a private project, there was some tension about how wide a net we would cast on an architect selection. But there were distinct advantages to the Umbrella to engage OMR, who had done the feasibility, the feasibility study in '08 and then the master plan in 2012, to continue to design the building. The board was quite happy with their work. The umbrella had been successful in fundraising. I think an important, 20% or 30% of the budget. And so the building committee invited OMR to an interview and were assured that that they would be able to meet the needs of the umbrella. And we made that recommendation to the board in March, and then did engage OMR in April to do a pre-schematic study, because no one was convinced that we should just be escalating the earlier estimates to have a realistic idea of what this project would cost. And then we did move into schematic design. So OMR is currently in the schematic design phase. They'll be completed about the end of this month, and then a new estimate will be done, both from an independent cost estimator and the architect as well. And we intend to engage a construction manager also about the beginning of November, and they also will do an estimate. So I think by the middle of, well, let's say by Thanksgiving, we should have a very up-to-date idea of what the project will cost. You're aware that in the lease there is notation about the imagined cost of the project and the improvements that the umbrella thought would be made when the lease was signed in 2012. I think that number is $6 million.
Right.
So the project that is currently being anticipated and currently for which the capital campaign is ongoing is for a more substantial project. And so it will be of interest to the umbrella to have approval from the town to make more extensive modifications, including demolition of the back portion of the building, and to agree to spend more money than was originally anticipated. So that's one of the reasons that we wanted to introduce the project to you tonight. What I'd like to show you tonight is our conceptual drawings. We've had one meeting with the neighbors. We have a neighborhood liaison member of the building committee, and because this is an important town building right in the middle of a residential neighborhood, we're very alert to the sensitivity of launching a construction project in that residential neighborhood. So we want to be certain that the project, we're open and transparent about the project. Everyone has an opportunity to express their point of view and to have their questions answered, including this board. So I'd like to show you the conceptual drawings tonight. And then if you're interested, we'd be happy to come back in several weeks when we have schematic drawings, or to submit those drawings to you in a way that's appropriate for you.
Thank you. You appreciate both of your comments. The issues that the board was interested in that would have you be here tonight, and we're glad you're here, were, as you articulated, I mean, the umbrella is an important organization in the town that does a lot of really terrific stuff, so we're just as citizens were interested. And then the lease that the town signs, authorized by town meeting to exercise a 30-year lease. I think your plans are just not quite exactly in line with that lease that was signed in terms of scope.
So I would say that the scope is enlarged from what was originally anticipated. The cost will be greater.
Yeah, sure.
But in looking at the list of criteria that was attached to the lease for all of the improvements that would be made, it's quite similar.
Quite similar,
They're
yes.
just there's not a single thing on that list that will not be incorporated. Let me rephrase that. Everything on that list will be incorporated with this project.
And then some.
And then some additional scope.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the lease specifically mentioned demolition, for example, although it does mention alterations to the building. So one might construe that that might mean demolition. But I think, in fact, we'd like to be just very specific about what the expectation is, and be certain that that would meet the town's interests.
Well,
to have
that's
the building
exactly right.
approved.
And so the hope, I think, is to hear from you where you are tonight. And then what I think would be a wise thing to do is when you have more finalized plans so that you know more specific, then the board would likely authorize the town manager just to meet with you folks and come back with a revised, if needed, lease.
An amendment, perhaps.
An amendment, whatever. I won't forejudge what it might be, but to have the town manager be authorized to meet with you and work out that, and then come back here and let us do our job with respect to that lease. So that'd be the plan. I think it seems like a reasonable way forward to me, but really looking forward to
Okay. So
seeing these boards. So.
I come over here.
Oh, you're fine.
So I'm hoping that the cable. I'm going to go down on my knees here. I'm hoping that the CCTV will be able to pick up the images on these boards. This is an elevation, a rendering of the front of the building, the entrance as it is today, and you will notice that there are no stairs in this rendering. That one will be able to walk directly in from a plaza through the front door. So completely seamless, accessible entrance to the building, when it's completed. And you'll also notice that the character of the elevation is relatively unchanged. The existing windows are the windows that are being upgraded with the CPA funding. And so the building is going to continue to hold its civic fabric in the neighborhood, just as it does today. So this is an existing site plan. The existing building is shown in orange, and the lot lines show all of the adjacent spaces. Now, I will note that in the lease, it's only the area that the building the site where the building sits is part of the lease. So, for example, this back buffer zone that abuts residences on Devon Street and sits behind the umbrella is not part of the lease. The umbrella lease allows the umbrella to continue its current use on this parcel, which starts at the buffer zone and goes around up to Stowe Street and then comes this way to behind the residences on Sudbury Road. This corner is a municipal parking lot, and the lease does allow the umbrella to use that lot as well as anyone else who has who has appropriate reason to use the lot. So the municipal parking lot on the corner will be something that we'll probably want to talk with you about in the future, because we believe there perhaps could be some improvements to that lot that would improve the parking and the safety of the vehicles coming in and out of that lot. So this is the existing site plan.
Can I interrupt just 1
Yes,
second?
of
As I
course.
understand, one of the concerns is making sure that the fire trucks have access over in this area.
Yes, that's right. So the design team has met with the fire department and has the criteria that they require. And I think they believe that they will have adequate access. And I'll show you on the proposed site plan. I don't have this drawing doesn't show the radius, the turning radius of the fire truck, but I think I can describe what the fire department has discussed. So the fire department imagines that they will be able to access the building, all sides of the building, by coming behind the building, pulling up this way, backing down, and exiting this way. And they may need access to the front corner by coming across the lawn. So that's that will be refined in the schematic design plans. And of course, we would need the fire department's sign off on all of that access. So you can see that the blue plan represents the proposed building footprint. It's a little wider than the existing building in the back, primarily because the foundations have been raised to stay out of the water table. That will improve the constructability of the building and improve the cost. So the building is a little bit wider, but the architects have been very innovative in being constrained about the overall size of the project from a budgetary standpoint and meeting the program. So you can see that the existing front of the building will stay as it is, and the proposed plan is to demolish the back of the building, shown in a dotted line here, and then make an addition in its place with all new systems. We anticipate the building will be LEED certified and will have improved energy efficiency and sustainability criteria as well. So there would be a drop-off here, a proposed green space on the right, and the service entrance is proposed to be in the back of the building as it is today. So I just want to reiterate, this tree buffer will be maintained. There is to be no work in that buffer.
That is town-owned at this point?
Yes.
But it doesn't look, I went today to see it, it doesn't look terribly well maintained by the town, I would say.
Yeah, it's not that well maintained. And so that may be something that we would, yes, that would be great, thanks.
At least while you're getting the mic, is it also, it's a little wider, I can see that. Is it a little deeper into the lot too?
It's a bit deeper as well, yes. And that is, this is a one-story, it's a set shop essentially that will protrude out in the back. But this will also make a much more effective and seamless connection from the set shop to the stage. One of the issues that we heard from neighbors at our previous meeting with them was that when the sets are being changed every 6 weeks at the end of a production, often there is a lot of material that is dumped, is thrown out of the building into a dumpster. It creates a lot of noise and a nuisance essentially. So I think that this new plan should avoid some of that for the neighbors.
Will the addition have a lower level, a basement?
It does have a lower level, and I have some plans, and I have a conceptual section to show you as well. So these are the proposed floor plans. This is the entrance level, main entrance here. The spaces shown in orange are studio spaces. They are studio spaces today, and the intention is to improve them as studio spaces going forward. The purple spaces are classroom spaces. These are the existing toilet rooms that will be brought up to code, and the fixture count will be increased appropriately, and this will be the new auditorium. There you can see that set shop appendage, essentially, that backs up to the stage. This is intended to be a full performing arts theater with a flyway. It will have, I think it will have 350 square seats, and now there are 364. Do I have those numbers right? So essentially, the intention is not to increase the capacity, but to improve the function of the existing spaces. And the area shown in green will be the offices. So this plan allows the umbrella to consolidate all the offices. So all the offices will be in one area, which will improve the management and communication of the leadership of the umbrella. There will be a drop-off entrance here, and a lobby that will pass through the building, as well as a communicating stair that will be code compliant and easy to access. The elevator, there will be two elevators, one here and one here. And that will also improve the accessibility. This new elevator, and you can imagine that there may be a loggia here and a glass doors that will provide an inviting drop-off entrance at this point. If you go down, there is the lower level of the auditorium. This elevator would take you down to the lower level of the auditorium. It's actually a raked floor, so that would probably be the route for accessibility. So someone in a wheelchair might want to take this elevator down and be able to sit close to the stage on the lower level. And then behind or underneath the high point of the seating is an orchestra room and a green room that will be quite superior to the spaces today. I guess you can also see that the plan is to hold the new construction away from the existing building, again, to be able to avoid undermining the existing footings and not have to do any sheeting and to protect the new excavation. Going up in the building, again, the oranges spaces are studio space, the purple are classroom. This space right in the middle, adjacent to the Black Box Gallery and Black Box Theater, is a maker space. So that will be a classroom. That's more of a production space. It will be designed to be visible, so you will be able to see art in action, in that space. So this is a Black Box Theater. Presently, the Black Box productions are on the stage in the present auditorium, and so this represents a new program, essentially, to have a separate Black Box Theater. And then as you go on up to the upper level, you're using this elevator and stairs, again, studios, all new systems in the building, new finishes, etc. I probably should say something that I've heard Jerry say before, and that is that the intention is not to run more productions than are currently, run, but to have them available to be presented in better spaces. So the intensity of use in this project will be the same as it is today. And finally, the conceptual model. Imagine that the existing building is just sawn through, just straight across. So the blue dotted line is about the location of the water table. So you can see that the foundation has been raised, the floor of the performing arts has been raised to keep it out of the water table. So Steve, your question about the basement level, that elevator near the stage would take one down to this elevation, and then you can see the raked floor. So I would also point out that the fly space in the back is being designed to be below the existing cornice line, so to try to keep the volume of the building no higher than this cornice line today. And we do know that there will be some mechanical space on the lower roofs, both sides of this middle portion and above the set shop roof. And you'll note that it says a screen mechanical terrace. So it is the intention of the umbrella to screen the mechanical space, mechanical units that sit on the roof, so they will not be visible to the neighbors as well. So those are my images. Any questions?
You currently have now a certain amount of solar. Is there some thought of adding the degree of solar energy?
Yes, thank you. 2 years ago, we installed 183 solar panels on the back roof and the side roof. That covers about 38% of our electrical usage. We would love to put more solar on. We have the flat roof option to do that. It's really going to be a matter of cost.
Yeah, but Jerry, I think you definitely got to evaluate your mechanical system for the new space. I think if you do the most, energy recovery and all. I mean, you guys will be building in the new code anyway, but I think making sure you spend the dollars on your HVAC system to be as efficient as possible may give you the better payback.
Right.
Less publicity, but better payback on the energy side. Is the existing building changing HVAC as well, or is it?
Yes, it is.
Those
the main
RTUs will
the
feed
main
that?
boiler room and electric room are in the building that's being demolished. So the early construction work will be putting in mechanical systems to serve the main building. As Elise mentioned, the building committee did recommend, and the board approved, building this towards LEED certification. So all those issues hopefully will be addressed. They're beyond me a little bit, but we have the experts on the team that will be addressing that.
And we do also anticipate that there will be, it will be phased construction because, as Jerry said, the mechanical systems have to be installed in the existing building before the old ones are removed, et cetera. So we do not have a firm design of that staging yet, but we will. We'll be developing that in the next couple of months, I think. So,
I do like the efficiency of the addition, though, to the way you guys have that black box theater up on top and solve the assembly egress, and it seems effortless with the way you've stacked the spaces. So that's really nice.
Last major renovation must have been 30, 40 years ago.
was there ever a renovation?
Well, the artists, when they took over the building, they did a lot of work.
Yeah.
And before them, I think the town had considered putting offices in the building, and they had done some preliminary work in that regard. But a major renovation...
Systems and whatever, yeah.
I mean, like I said, the sprinklers were put in oh, Carrie's here.
2006.
2006, the sprinkler system was put in, and the boilers were done about the same time.
A couple years later.
It was later.
And the cupola has been replaced. The cupola was replaced. The solar photovoltaic arrays were installed on the roof. Now the windows are being installed. So I would say there's been some attention. There's been as much attention to these systems as was affordable.
And the real benefit of us doing the master plan, which we had CPA funds to do, was it really gave us a roadmap. So we could say, okay, we have a master plan. The cupola is going to be the cupola, so we can put money into restoring that now. The photovoltaics, we knew where we could put those without interrupting the construction. We did a renovation to the gallery, which was which was called out in the original master plan, so that work won't have to be redone. And of course, the windows are on that same path. The new work isn't going to impact the windows, so we can confidently go about doing that.
Additional questions?
Great.
Well, Elise and Jerry are grateful to you for coming, and we'll want to be back in touch with you again when you're a little bit further along so that we could sit down, and then Chris would authorize you to meet with them to put that back together again, and we'll look forward to hearing from you as the plans progress. That's great.
Thanks
so much for
tonight.
I think it's great that we've been able to have it at an early stage as well. But been very
I
helpful.
think it's just terrific. It's a great asset for the town. All right. Consider.
Public folks coming, wanted to say anything?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Did anybody who was here want to offer a remark? Please come up. Thanks. Please come up to the microphone and tell us who you are and then tell us what you want to say.
Alan Proctor, 57 Sudbury Road.
Alan?
My wife and I and David Morrill, our neighbor, were at the meeting, which we appreciated having the meeting. It was very interesting. The one thing that didn't come up is of great interest to us at 57 Sudbury Road, and that is the use of 49 Sudbury Road by the Emerson Umbrella at some point or points during the construction and maybe after the construction. And that may not be part of the project as such, and so maybe it's not something that needs to come up at this point. But it certainly got our attention because we walk out of our kitchen door and we look at 49 Sudbury Road.
The use of it would be temporary use for offices and that type of thing, the assumption?
That's what Jerry said,
Yeah.
yes. And that possibly the backyard might be used for some part of construction.
This is 49.
I don't mean to speak for Jerry. Jerry
This is
was very
49 Sudbury
forthcoming.
Road. This is a property that Mr. Proctor's mentioned.
It's always been a single residence up to now.
You want to say anything?
Jerry, do you have a
I can
comment?
try to address it. We don't have a whole lot of information.
Here's a mic, Jerry.
I can't give a whole lot of information because it's still in the planning process. But we have been approached by the owners of that property, and they've offered to let us use the house as swing space during construction. So it's such a tight site that we imagine that some offices or something will have to move out so we can move artists around in the building. So they have offered that. We haven't finalized any agreement around that. They've also offered the back part of the property because it's an oversized property. So they can take the back section of it, and they've offered it to the umbrella for use to improve the entrance in that area if it's needed for parking or a small structure or something. There's nothing defined about it. We just have some flexibility in the offices. Well, so I don't have any answers to any of those questions because it's so preliminary in the planning. We have engaged the architects to do a code analysis of the building that would tell us exactly what we could or couldn't do there.
Of this building.
Of that project, yeah.
Will you have this matter resolved by the time you'll be ready to sit down with the town manager and talk about the lease?
Well, we've signed the agreement with them, so I hope that they will.
Guess you would.
I'm hoping that they can do the work relatively quickly. I know that they've been in the house. I think they were in the house today, looking at it.
I'll have to admit, it's the thought that there might be parking in what is a residential area or a building built there that is a great concern.
Yes, I understand that.
I think that's a very fair comment.
Yeah.
And from my standpoint, I think how 49 Sudbury would be used is will be part of the phasing plan for construction. And certainly that will need to be evaluated carefully. And similarly, the use of the municipal lot is, the parking there is a potential, issue during the construction as well as it's phased. So,
And the use of this building would be temporary?
that's my understanding.
Yeah, it's, tell us, grab the mic.
Residential neighborhood, and Umbrella now wants to expand, major construction project, going to take 2 years, they say, probably more. And now I think that's enough, and then now they want to do something with that adjoining property. And it is a very nice neighborhood, a lot of old homes all the way around it. And I think we'd just be ashamed to have it converted into some kind of commercial use.
Can I just your name?
Yeah. Pardon?
I have your name for the record.
Yeah, David Morrill, Morrill, 59 Sudbury Road. And I have one more thing to say, if I'm permitted to do. I'd like to show you where I live. We live in a converted carriage house built in the late 1800s. And my property is in the back. My backyard is right there. The edge of my house comes, my part of there is the carriage house. My part is this part right back in here. And I'm very, very close to the theater. Here's the existing wall. They're going to spread it out, and the proofing is pretty good. What we do here occasionally, things like drums and bugles and things go on. And I just want to make sure that maximum soundproofing is in the construction, and that's got to be very important to us, and I'm sure to everybody else. Because sometimes some of their shows have a lot of music, sounds, and it goes off and on till after 10 o'clock, maybe even up to 11, which I think is their deadline, according to the lease. And also that construction be limited to daily work hours and hopefully just to a work week of 5 days. It'd give us a couple of days to free from all this noise. Because even when the shows change, they have a history of throwing material off the top floor. Some of it's metallic material that goes down into a steel, receptacle, and it makes noises like bombs going off, and particularly right here in our bedrooms right there. And it's, my wife and I are both in our upper 80s. We like our sleep in the morning. We like to get up maybe at 7 or 8 o'clock, but the one thing I do commend them for, because the town was collecting, they were emptying the rubbish can, whatever they call it, at 6 o'clock in the morning, making a lot of noise when they changed one of these huge things. And I did send them an email, and they've been very, very good about having it come later in the day. So I commend them on that. So, and another thing, I guess, is the lighting. They have some spotlights on top that go right down on our house, and 24 hours a day. And I'd like to see that maybe limited if possible. Thank you.
Well, thank you both very much. Those are some issues that I hope we'll take into account as we go ahead with this plan, and you'll have an opportunity, I hope, to hear more about it as we go. So thanks very much for coming and sharing your views with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks to you for making sure I got to that.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
Next, consider a request from the owner of Black Birch Land on Forest Ridge to waive the town's first right of refusal to purchase property under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 61.
Have one of these?
Mr. Paul, you're here. Good evening.
Evening, members of the board. Tom Falwell, represent the Row Realty Trust, who's the owner of the property. We're in receipt, of course, of the planning board's recommendation to you, and obviously fully endorse that. Jack McBride, who you probably most, if not all of you know, was the present developer of the successful Black Birch project, is the proposed purchaser of this land for a second.
Can I interrupt you for just a minute? Andrew, would you ask them if they could please... Thank you. Sorry. Please, I'm sorry for the interruption.
Not at all. Jack is here if you have any particular questions about that project or anything with respect to the proposed development. He'll be happy to answer them, but the recommendation of the planning board is obviously, as I said, something we endorse.
Right, we have that correspondence from the board, right? Is there anything, Mr. Town Manager, that you want to add to this?
I provided the board the copy of the purchase and sale agreement, which is valid, which is required under the statute. So the only thing I would mention is I saw that it's on the Natural Resource Commission's agenda for Wednesday.
Right.
So if the board is interested in approving the request, I suggest that it take effect on the condition that the Natural Resources Commission. So if you're agreeable with that, that would be my only comment.
So we would want to amend the motion that we have before us then, to have it take effect, not tonight, but...
Upon favorable action by the Natural Resources Commission, it's been the board's practice to solicit input from the Planning Board, Natural Resources Commission, other folks in town boards, whether or not there is any interest in acquiring the property. There's been no interest expressed, but the formality is the NRC hasn't voted, and they will do so Wednesday night.
But you provided us a notice from the planning board that they had agreed not to exercise right of first refusal.
It wouldn't create any hardship for the owner?
No, because that meeting is...
Anything until you get to...
Part of the process, we fully understand that.
Mr. McBride, do you have anything else you'd like to add, or, no? Okay. Comments, questions from the board?
I'll be at the NRC meeting.
Good.
So it's upon approval of the NRC Is that the right term?
No, I'd say the board is waiving the town's right on the condition that the natural resources agree in so waiving the town's rights of first refusal. Sorry about that, I should have mentioned that before.
Supports or wait, agrees with. All right. I move to decline on the condition that the NRC agrees with the waiving of the town's first right of refusal on the 9+ acres of 61B property at Lot 4A and Parcel A, Forest Ridge Road, owned by Todd A. Poulos.
Is that agreeable?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. Thank you both very much for coming. I would like to make a change in the order of the, Ms. Redmond is here, and I don't see any reason to keep her any longer. We can switch item number 9 and number 8. Is that all right with you folks? Brooke?
Yeah, hi.
Come on up.
Thank you for having me. So I represent the...
Identify yourself for the record, please.
Brooke Redmond, 87 Fairhaven Road. I represent the organizing planners of the 6th Farm-Based Education National Gathering. The Farm-Based Education Network is the overseeing host of the project, and their fiscal agent of that project is Shelburne Farms in Vermont, and thus the administrator of this project. But local host partners at the statewide level include Massachusetts Farm to School, the trustees, and then in Massachusetts Farm to School, and our local team players are Concord Carlisle Adult Education and the Concord Food Collaborative. And at this point, we're looking to welcome probably more than 300 people to the event in early November. The audience will be made up of farmers and educators, community organizers, clinicians, conservationists, culinary artists. There really doesn't seem to be an end to the ways that people are engaging their constituents on working farms, from culinary arts to returning veterans to young adults with autism. There's just really no limit to what people are doing on farms. But when we start thinking about what this means for the town of Concord, we've because of our local partnerships, have made a real commitment to ensuring that there's a lot of program for what you might call the citizen Concordian. May not be a farmer, may not be an educator, may just be someone in town who keeps chickens or wants to know how to have more pollinators in their garden or wants their children to learn how to cook. So to that end, we've established a number of what we're calling community programs on Saturday morning. And the community is also invited to be a part of the Saturday evening Taste of Historic Concord party at the Colonial Inn. So for that, you should be thinking of Indian pudding and clam chowder and maybe some folks in really uncomfortable corsets. But we have also...
Not you, Stevie.
I like to wear corsets.
Raise your
What are you
hand.
talking about?
I'm sure Nancy can hook us up with some lovely ensembles.
Of
Thank
course.
you so much.
But we have had some various generous donors, and this has been my responsibility, raising the funds to make it affordable and accessible and to provide a large number of scholarships. So all of the Concord and Carlisle farmers, educators, administrators, and school food service coordinators have been invited to attend, take advantage of the complimentary registration. And that includes the affiliated program on Friday that Massachusetts Farm to School is hosting, which is the Massachusetts Farm and Sea to Cafeteria Conference. And the difference for people that aren't completely submerged in this work is that the procuring food through the federal school lunch program, funded in part by the Department of Defense. I mean, it is just one of the most complicated things in an already intractable global food system. So that day-long piece, which is why it's really focusing on the school food service coordinators at the public and private schools in Concord and Carlisle, is really about bringing in the USDA and hearing from them how you can, for example, phrase different parts of your bids so that you are meeting the goals and the demands of your food program.
Got it.
The workshops on Saturday and Sunday will include some of that, but really are heavier into how people of all professions are engaging people in work. So.
What kind of attendance? Do you have any idea?
So the numbers are fun to think about. 300 is sort of our sweet spot for what we'd like to register. That's our, how our budget really sings beautifully at about 300 people registered. But when we take into account the Friday program with Massachusetts Farm to School, I think their capacity is something like 400. And then when you add into it the community programming that we're offering, in the evening events that people will sort of a la carte some of this, the numbers get a little bit bigger, but somewhere in the 300 to 500 number, all said and done. Some of the community pieces that are probably of interest on a grand scale are Brian Donahue with Kathy Worth from the trustees are going to do a panel talking about the Massachusetts Food Plan and the New England Food Vision. One of the other big picture things that we have for the community is Land for Good. If you all remember the community assessment, the food assessment that was done in 2012, one of the big pieces, in addition to advancing a more robust farm to institution program in the town, was turning more of the available arable land into productive working land. So taking some of these green lawn spaces that we have and thinking about how they can be home gardens or put to other productive use. And so Land for Good is going to be doing a workshop that we hope people in town will take advantage of, which talks about the programs that they have and groups like New Entry Sustainable Farming Project have to match private landowners with farmers. So if you think about, for example, there's a house as you go before the bridge after you cross Route 2 going towards Willard, Verrill has an alley of rhubarb going up the side of one family's driveway. And it's really sort of low maintenance agricultural product that at once beautifies the landowner's vista, but it is also productive and in some ways a more sustainable way of managing your land. And then you get into folks who are really interested in having large grazing animals or small grazing animals, taking control of some of their invasives, and it depends on the appetite of the private landowner. But they're really, it's a good way for people to understand and I don't understand them at all to even mention them. I'm going to get it wrong, but the tax incentives involved in having your land in agricultural use can be really interesting to private landowners that have.
It has to be 5 acres, though, I think is the current rule. Yes, I have grazing animals, red squirrels in my.
I have a woodchuck the size of a circus pony.
I thought of you a few days ago. There was I'm sorry, I've forgotten the details, but there was a story on a news program I was watching. I don't remember what it was, of a company, a new business venture. I don't even remember the town, but their business model was people worked for them and they went to individual private citizens' homes and they planted gardens. And then they had a vegetable sharing arrangement with the homeowner, where the homeowner got like a homeowner CSA kind of a thing. And then the rest of it went and was sold commercially, I guess.
Front lawns. Basically.
Yeah, it was front lawns. And it was not only is that cool, but,
Practical application when you think about the.
But this was like a business. These guys were running this as a business. I thought that was pretty creative.
Have we been thinking about, or in this process of, given that water and this year's drought, how that fits in?
If this were the NOFA Massachusetts conference, we would be thinking more. We would have more practical agricultural skill training in this event, but that's not really part of what we're doing here. In the context of all of the issues that challenge the national food system, having a more localized, regionalized food system is really important and shows signs of being one of the most promising ways to move forward there. To that end, what this opportunity does for practitioners is provide the resources to people that know that public engagement and public outreach is an important part of the narrative. So when people talk about, what can you do in your own community, these are the people that are growing the food and preparing the food and bringing it to market who are empowered with the information they need to be good communicators of why locally and regionally produced food is important. And to that end, the keynote speaker is actually really interesting. I don't know if anybody is familiar with the Center for an Agricultural Economy in Hardwick, Vermont. Well, Sarah Waring is the executive director up there, and she's going to be doing the keynote keynote address for this event.
Saturday?
On Saturday, mid-morning. So that really is a nice way of thinking about engaging one of the exciting things about having it in Concord is the opportunity to sort of exalt and celebrate all of the wonderful things that are happening, really letting our agrarian roots show. You've got the Minuteman stepping away from the plow. You've got this unbelievable agricultural narrative, and it's exciting for the town to be hosting this, and it's also exciting for the planners to be imagining bringing something like this to a community that is so active and has so many things going on around this space, what it might look like coming out of this in a few years, having used this as maybe a catalyst or a motivator or somehow some sort of incentive to see what could happen. And I speak, I guess, for the Concord Food Collaborative in that I think what we might hope to see is some action around farm to institution in the community, specifically around farm to school. Maria Barker has been so wonderful in really wanting to know what is possible for the school lunch program, but obviously having her hands pretty tied with needing to prepare a large number of meals every day in a very challenging system of regulations and guidelines. So I think working with Massachusetts Farm to School and making some of the connections through the Concord Marketplace, which is an online resource for farmers and buyers to match up through the Concord Food Collaborative, trying to make some more of those connections. And as we look back or look ahead or look back to how, where things might have started, we're hoping that this makes some nice connections and moves some of these things along. And brings people together that have the same ideas. I mean, that's really what, connections that lead to change.
It's very exciting.
Thank you.
Very exciting, and I know we all look forward to it. It'll be a lot of fun, and we're grateful to you for coming and bringing us up to speed.
I have a couple of questions.
Of course you can.
I think I tried to reach you, and then I heard.
And then I heard my husband is your train partner, which is so fun.
Yeah.
He recognized her voice on our voicemail.
We talk on the train platform every morning. So I had just a couple of questions. Where can somebody find more information about coming to the conference? Is there someplace online, or your brochures, or how do you access?
So we have the Farm-Based Education Network, and that address is farmbasededucation.org. There is a drop-down menu that says 2016 Gathering, and there is a page for farmers, there is a page for educators. We have 50-plus workshops, and it's not acceptable to imagine that somebody with whatever lens they have would know which ones would be appropriate to them. So farmers, educators, and for the community, those are the drop-down menus. And then there's, of course, the full PDF of the program.
And the cost of participating, is it geared towards adults and farmers? Can students participate at some level? Or
yes, we have a very significant number of scholarships. So I should know the answer to the exact cost question. I think the Saturday is $165, and so maybe Sunday is not that much. I'm embarrassed that I don't know, but I won't even pretend that I do at this point, because my job has been making sure that anybody that wants to go is able to go. So again, it's complimentary to all Concord and Carlisle farmers and anybody in the Concord and Concord public schools and private schools. We have 4 seats per independent school, are free to go. And the audience is anybody.
And have you been coordinating with the Ag Committee in town, or what is your relationship with them?
Yes, I blew it. They invited me to come on Monday of last week, and then at the last, I thought it was Thursday. It was originally Thursday, but I sent a big long email, and just this morning, Emily Wheeler has been in touch with Jen Flint, who is the facilitator of the Concord Food Collaborative, to make sure that we have an article up in both the national website and on the Concord Food Collaborative, which is really lovely. It's called 48 Hours in Concord. For people that come to town, it's like, what do you do if you've got an hour free? Well, you go to the North Bridge and Robin's house. It's like as you know, it's one-hit wonder. And I tried to get the trustees to keep up that great installation, but I understand that's been, they should take it down when they said they were going to. They were going to. Yes. I didn't realize what I was getting into. I was like, come on, it's just one more week. And they were like, But really lovely. It mentions, how to find access to the local farms and, what people who have a food and farm mind can do when they have 48 hours to sort of immerse themselves in the town. So
Great. Thank you.
you're very welcome.
Other questions? Thanks, Brooke, very
And
much.
Spindrift is going to be one of
Oh,
the
they are?
official beverages.
Oh, that's great.
Excellent.
A nice local guy is making that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you
We look
so much.
forward
Thank
to
you
it.
very much for
Definitely
coming.
Come out to the Taste of Historic Concord at the end. Indian pudding. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, next on our agenda is finalizing the December special town meeting. I think also we have the item number 11, which is a special town meeting with respect to Minuteman. Do we want to talk about these together? Or
Sure.
we don't need to take any particular action with respect to the already scheduled special town meeting, correct?
Correct.
Does anybody have any questions or concern about the special town meeting or the language of the warrant, or, I don't think we should, huh? Not at all. Carrie, would you like to join us then, and we'll skip, not skip, but we'll move over item 10 and go to item number 11. Let me see if I can give a quick background. We had in the special election for the Minuteman Building Program, it was approved, but A-Town Belmont, who was one of the towns that stayed in the district, voted rather significantly to leave. And according to the district agreement that was in place, if then their town meeting or representatives to their town meeting, their legislative body, votes by 2/3 majority to indicate to the district that they wish to leave, then they are no longer obligated to pay any of the capital charges associated with the new building. And if they do that, their special town meeting is scheduled for the 19th. If they so indicate that they would like to leave, they'll notify the Minuteman School Committee. And then each town will have 60 days, I believe it is, in which they could call a special town meeting. The special town meeting vote would be to deny Belmont's desire to leave the district. If we don't have a special town, if we don't call a special town meeting, that's essentially an affirmative vote for their withdrawal. It takes 9 of the 16 members of the original district to vote to allow them to leave, for them to leave. The leaving takes 3 years, but during that period, in any event, they are not obligated to pay any capital costs.
And each town is equivalent to one another, whether it's a small town. And
This is this is not a count the votes. This is each town gets a vote according to the agreement. The state has issued a letter to the superintendent indicating that they are approving out-of-district capital costs with a formula. We've talked about that before. If Belmont decides they wish to leave the district, and in fact they do leave the district, they would need then to decide how they intend to service the needs of their children. If they decide they want to send them Minuteman, and that works for Minuteman, then they would be assessed whatever the out-of-district capital costs are. This morning, Chris and I attended a meeting in Lexington of folks from the school, various town managers, town administrators, various selectmen to talk about this. I guess I would summarize it by saying I didn't really learn anything I don't think I knew. So we don't know yet what Belmont is going to do. I don't.
They have a town meeting scheduled for Wednesday.
19th, Wednesday, have a special town meeting. There were folks there from Belmont that have been part of this all along, and they were very strong about wanting out, but I hear there are others that may not want out. And so I'll get to Carrie in a minute.
Don't know what's left.
Well, I think this is our sort of decision. Our decision is if Belmont decides that they're going to notify the school committee they want out, we have to decide whether or not we would want to call a special town meeting to essentially deny them. I want to hear from Carrie, but I can't. I've looked at the numbers, as I think I reported last time. If they get out, based on this formula, and assuming they do or they do not send their children back to Minuteman, it impacts Concord somewhere, generously estimating, between $3,000 or $4,000 and $40-some thousand, $45,000. That being the one if they send their kids someplace else, and $4,000 if they stay, send the kids, and pay the out-of-district costs.
A year or per kid, or
for the bond?
Cost is in the neighborhood of 350,000. Is that right? I don't have those numbers tonight because I haven't looked at what the impact would be of Belmont leaving because we don't know yet whether they are leaving. I'm just saying, our costs.
Oh, our costs, yes.
Concord's costs.
350 to 400,000 and rising.
Those are
both
operating
because
costs.
our enrollment share is increasing and because we are starting to take on the capital debt of the project. For the early phasing at this point.
I can't think of a reason why we would want to call a special town meeting. Because the only reason would be to vote them out, or to not let them out. And if we didn't let them out, they wouldn't pay in-district capital costs, and since they're not out, they wouldn't pay out-of-district capital costs. So it seems to me
what's
that's
the
just
point
not
then?
too smart.
Just even if you vote to keep them in, they don't have to pay?
Roger Dodger.
I think we're done talking about this. Jesus, let's move on, please.
I wanted that's our responsibility to decide this. I wanted the question essentially for Carrie, and I'm glad you're here. Have I missed something?
No, I don't believe you've missed anything at all. Except that, not missed. We don't know what they're going to do. Their warrant committee is meeting tonight. You went to a meeting of town officials this morning on the 13th, I believe, last week. There was finally, the school administration had a informational meeting in Belmont. Fairly well attended, and I know that there were several members of their warrant committee is like their finance committee. There were several members there. We know that some of the members of the warrant committee changed their mind just before the ballot election, and others had said, if they had the clarification from the commissioner's memo about that out-of-district capital, what he's calling an increment, not a charge, would have probably swayed them. So they're very interested in that, and I expect they're having that discussion right now at their warrant committee. At the town meeting last spring, which voted in Belmont to not approve the project, and again, they were the only town to do that, they did not have 2/3 of the town meeting members voting in opposition to the project. When it was on the ballot, September 20th, they had about 30% that voted for the project. So, I don't know how it's going to go.
Well, I don't think any of us know, but, all we can do is try to determine if it goes one way or the other, what should we be prepared to do. If they don't vote to leave, we don't have anything to worry about.
And I will tell you that in the discussions, the very lengthy discussions that took place over a couple of years on the regional agreement, this component about the withdrawal requiring only a majority approval instead of what had been a unanimous approval, and the stipulation that a town that is withdrawing under the circumstances of having voted against such a project was done intentionally so that we would let them go, so that the town that wanted to leave would be allowed to leave. That we would not have an incentive to keep them there, and in fact, we would have a disincentive to force them to stay. And we did that even before we knew that that DESI was going to approve this capital increment for out-of-district students.
Well, the reason for raising it tonight is, as you know, we already have a special town meeting called for December 8th, and I think it would be really bad if we had to have 2 special town meetings. So the intent here was, if we were going to have a special town meeting, we'd open the warrant tonight, close it in 10 days, and we would just essentially, instead of having a special town meeting inside a special town meeting, we would just reopen the warrant, leave it open for 10 days, and then this would just be an additional warrant article on the existing December 8th town meeting. But unless I hear somebody who is interested in doing that, I think we just let the matter drop and wait to hear what our friends in Belmont intend to do.
If they vote to stay, it's a moot topic. There's no need for it. If they vote to leave, I don't see any incentive to try to force them to stay. And if I were Belmont, I would be pretty angry at towns that would.
Well, they shouldn't be. The best outcome for them fiscally would be to be.
I understand that. I do understand that.
Right, so
but
is there,
by leaving if they vote to leave, and they leave, they will pay more than, considerably more than if they vote to leave and are forced to stay.
So, do I hear anybody interested?
I see no reason to bring this to a vote to our town meeting again. I think
would agree.
we've heard several things from Belmont. They turned down the capital cost. They turned down the project basically because they are in a disagreement with DESI's requirements for the size of the school, not the educational outcome. They had different reasons for turning it down. When they had the opportunity to leave the district, they chose not to. So now they're sitting with 2 pieces of their decision, one having voted down the school project and one to stay in the district.
Right.
So I don't believe it has any.
So if they vote to leave, it will cost them more?
If they vote to leave and they are allowed to leave,
Yeah.
their exit from the district would be effective on July 1st, 2020. September 2020 is when the new building will open. There will be some small debt up until that point. And they will remain responsible if they leave. They still have to pay for debt that was approved before this project.
No.
So if they vote to leave and are allowed to leave, they will carry responsibility for the earlier debt as having been a member at that time. And if they choose then to send students to Minuteman as an out-of-district, they will pay the capital increment as defined in the memo from the commissioner under the regulations. And that has the force of law. So if there's room for them, they will pay.
So,
No reason.
No, I'm just trying to think what the maximum difficulty would be for them, and I would vote for that. So it's quite the process, and the way they've been, I don't have any respect for it. So I think we've wasted enough time. I'm not interested in it.
all right, Jane,
I agree.
Tom?
I would agree.
All right, we'll move on then. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Karen.
very much.
Thank you for the
Thank you,
explanation.
Karen.
All right, we finally get to item number 10, the sign bylaw. So let me try to tee this up for us a little bit, and I'll ask Chris to weigh in. We had a bylaw. We were essentially told, nah, I don't think you do. Right? So we have to develop new regulations governing the use of temporary private signs in the town. And as you can see, without an enforceable bylaw, towns kind of like ants, they kind of all of a sudden show up a lot of places. So this draft was developed, was distributed to you folks today. Everybody has a copy on the desk. The process that I'd like to see issues, we could have a discussion this evening if everybody has comments or questions. Then what I think is I'd like any comments or changes in the draft that you might want to suggest to be sent to Andrew, so he could get them to the town manager and you could think about incorporating them into another draft. Once we have a draft that we all think is responsible, then I'm suggesting that we would schedule a public hearing. And I think it would be just a smart thing to do. This is going to be something people have a lot of interest in, so we should have a public hearing and get folks' input. Once we've had the public hearing and the input, then we can come back and we can hopefully adopt a new sign ordinance that would stand the test of some kind of legal challenge. Does that seem like a reasonable path forward, folks? Okay, Chris, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that covers it. Again, what this set of regulations does is we have a sign code bylaw that applies to all property, private and public property, but we use language such as political signs and charitable signs that were deemed not appropriate. So town meeting voted in April to change the bylaw and eliminate that language and make the distinction only between commercial signs, which are like advertising, and non-commercial signs or all others. So the question for the board is, do we wish to allow any commercial or non-commercial signs on town property, including in the public right-of-way? So, and some of the signs that you see in the public right-of-way are roofing contractors and other signs, real estate signs. Generally, they're supposed to go up while the painting project or the roofing project is going on, but often they're there for much longer, landscapers and that sort of thing. And then there's the other signs that you see around election time, and they proliferate in the traffic islands. So years prior to the recent changes, we identified a few traffic islands where such signs would be permitted and tried to discourage them elsewhere. The assistant town manager prepared much of this draft, and her research, she found that Stowe, Acton, and another community, I think maybe Littleton, do not allow signs in the public right-of-way. Now, their enforcement is sketchy at times, but on their books, they have bylaws that prohibit the installation of privately owned signs on public property, including the public right-of-way.
And that's the way this is drafted.
And this was drafted to not allow commercial signs, so the real estate signs, the contractor signs would not be allowed in the public right-of-way. They would be allowed indefinitely on private property.
Yeah, always, yeah.
So, which generally is pretty close by. But this does contemplate putting non-commercial signs, so whether it's a Fenn School fundraiser or a political sign or anything else, a non-commercial sign could go in front of one's property, but not in front of the property of others, but in the public right-of-way in front of your property, or on some traffic islands. And the two places we've allowed banner signs are Harvey Wheeler and the Emerson Field fence. You'll see signs posted. Those have received mixed reviews. Some people feel it makes Harvey Wheeler look a little bit, unkempt or something. But so that's a question that you may want to consider, is whether we want to allow, again, non-commercial signs in those two locations or on the traffic islands.
And this particular season right now, with this still in draft form, what is...
I've been telling people we are not enforcing. We had restrictions
It's wide
we are
open
not
which makes it an interesting pilot time
Right.
to see how this is being experienced by the town.
And I make my political decisions based on what I see, so I keep changing my mind every time I see a sign. I tell you, it's really getting out of control.
Undecided
Right,
voter. So, this draft suggests that you would have to give approval for signs to be located in the right-of-way, in the public right-of-way.
except in front of the property owner's property.
Right.
So the question, I guess, is would you keep, is that
So
Is it
Ruth-
intended that this is written, and do we keep a record of the ones that you've approved?
So back in the day, we had a limit, so on the traffic islands near the 99 and here
Yeah.
at Maine and Lexington, and there was a limit, I think, of 3 to 4, so you could only have a certain number, and they could only be there for a week, and so there was a line, and,
Yeah.
and it was coordinated through what's now Andrew's desk.
Have
So,
you
but we
seen
did-
that out there
Yeah.
recently?
So-
Wallpaper.
So and the Middlesex Savings Bank and the library were very gracious, and they allowed a proliferation of the nonprofit signs and the non-commercial signs. So I'm suggesting in the traffic islands, we identify a few where people want to put their signs, and then not generally allow them elsewhere, and have some kind of
Are
control.
we obligated to do that?
No, you're not.
And if we were going to impose some control, would it just be limited to where these signs would go? Otherwise, we're sort of in that tense, that first come, first serve. How do you?
So on the traffic islands, again, it was first come, first serve.
Right.
And so
So
we would
that-
say there's a limit of what's a reasonable number. You know, I think it was 3, but maybe 5 is feasible. But it was 4. So you put a limit on it, and it's first come, first serve, but it has to be registered. So occasionally people would put signs up without approval, and the building commissioner would be asked to remove those. And it seemed to work generally, except for the constitutional problem that we had.
So I'm just questioning your approval. Is it? I would prefer to see a written approval, and then we just keep a record or a document which signs have been approved, not a verbal approval.
Yeah, so no, it is written, and I think with
I
our,
can say it in here just as a.
fair enough. I think we would ask people to register online.
This evening, or?
I'd just like to get people's general, this is going to go on for 3 more minutes.
I mean,
As long as there's something in writing, I feel I would like to see that accountability.
Yep.
I'm
Steve?
fine with the right-of-way in front of folks' property to be used. I think it's very hard to enforce that. So, and it's almost literally kind of considered their space. But the traffic islands, I got to tell you, I'm not convinced about that. When you have that many signs out there, I don't read them. I don't think they serve any effective purpose, and it's just visual clutter. It's just like we're having a conversation about overhead wires, and everyone wants everything underground.
They're put up in a haphazard way. They're not
Absolutely. I don't even want to get into the graphic quality. That's a whole nother, that's a subjective issue, but I just don't see them being that effective. And to put town staff in that position to argue over who, is it a drawing every week? Everyone puts a name in and you pull I guess maybe democracy is messy. I don't know. I can be convinced. I mean,
Chris, am I correct, though, that the town would not be violating anything if we just said no signs?
Correct.
Right?
That's right.
That seems to
we
me
could
to be,
prohibit.
if they want it
Everywhere, or-
if you have it on individual
public property.
the individual monitors it and can decide how many signs and how to do it. But I guess my preference is kind of seeing what's gone on. Why have any signs? I mean, the schools and other things can find people, and you go ask them and put the signs up with their permission on the individual property.
Oh, wait, let me just make sure I understand you. No signs
right away.
on public,
Yes.
so no sign in front of my house,
No, if you want it in front of your.
public
But not on
property.
the right-of-way, though.
You're right away, but on
But
your
not on the
property.
right of way,
Yeah.
but in my yard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just wanted to understand,
Yeah.
all right, yeah. Because that's where, we don't have any jurisdiction over what somebody puts
Right.
in their yard.
And I prefer to see the candidates and the other groups go out and get the individuals who want to have the signs, put the signs up.
Okay. Please get your thoughts, if you can, in writing to Andrew. What I will do is, before we give it to Chris, who I assume will give it back to Kate to do the redraft, I'll work with Andrew to kind of get our act together, if 3 of us are on the same page and send stuff in. I'll be the channel to do that,
So
but
you
I
want
won't
comments
share
to
it.
you?
I'll send them to
Send the
him, and
comments
I'll
to
meet
Andrew.
with Andrew.
Okay.
Then we don't run into accidentally you copied 3 or 4 people on it or something. So just send them to Andrew, and I'll meet with him. We'll get a common draft and get it to Chris, and then he'll get it back to us, and once we go, okay, then we'll schedule a public hearing. Okay?
So do we have a Word version of this, of APP 48?
Yes, I do.
It'd be great to have that, 'cause it's easy
Yeah,
to do
much easier to
do a review on that.
putz
than
with.
do it by paper.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and thank Kate for us getting that done. That's terrific. Item number 12 on our agenda, Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, rescind the order of taking for 4B Commonwealth Avenue. You'll recall this was, I believe, the property where the owner was not going to grant the easement, and then partially through our deliberations that he changed his mind and we did it. So we had already issued an order of taking. So what we need to do is we need to resend this order of taking. So I think it's pretty straightforward. But we'll need a motion on,
All right.
to that effect. Mr. Ring.
Move that the board, 1, rescind 2 orders of taking voted on August 15th, 2016 regarding the property at 4B Commonwealth Avenue, Concord, in recognition of the fact that the owner of said property, 24 Commonwealth Avenue Associates LLC, has donated permanent and temporary easement rights to the town necessary for the construction of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail project, and that those orders of taking are no longer necessary. And 2, instruct town council not to record said orders with the Registry of Deeds.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Steve. Very good.
One step closer to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail.
Woo-hoo.
They open bids on construction sometime in October.
Yeah, later, yeah. Discuss the purchase of the Balls Hill Road. So perhaps you could explain this sort of for the record.
The town is required, when the town purchases something, the town is required, it's generally required to solicit proposals or bids or what have you. And so occasionally, if we were leasing property for an office building, it might be that there'd be multiple parties interested in leasing property to us. But Chapter 30B requires that the Balls Hill Road is unique. We're acquiring it because of its unique properties. So therefore, the board must vote to indicate that you're purchasing the property because of its unique qualities, and therefore you're not complying with the standard provision under Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, on going out to bid for the acquisition of property.
But we are allowed to do this.
Correct.
And this was a letter, we'd be authorizing you to, a letter, is that what we're doing here to?
So I'm just making a term, I think the board just needs to vote to make the
Vote to
determination
declare.
that it's a unique property.
And even though we're not the sole owner, anytime the town, even a partial ownership.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Any discussion?
It is a unique property. It's
Yes.
pretty
Certainly
amazing.
is.
Absolutely.
It is.
Certainly.
Well, I would certainly entertain a motion then.
Move that the select board make the determination that advertising for the purchase of the Balls Hill Road property would not benefit the town because of the land's unique quality and location of providing protection of a vital water supply source for the town.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 14, Town Manager's Annual Performance Evaluation and Salary Adjustment. I sent the evaluation along to you folks, plus a salary evaluation. I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments you had of it. First, then before I have a motion, I would just like to indicate that to the town manager our continued thanks for your effective and efficient leadership in the town. It's greatly appreciated by the select board and I think by all the citizens of the town. So I would congratulate you on another terrific year.
I
Thank
think
you
we
very
are
much.
lucky to have you
Well-
as our town manager.
I feel fortunate to be working in Concord, so thank you.
Great. Thank you.
There are two motions. The first is to approve the town manager's performance evaluation, and when we have approved it, it'll be posted along with other. All second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then the second motion should read salary adjustment as indicated in his contract.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Public comments. Mr. Grom, Linda, Henry? No? Miscellaneous correspondence. I have nothing. Are you going to announce the
Energy Futures.
Energy Futures? The Energy Futures Task Force is having a public hearing at Harvey Wheeler at 7 o'clock on the 20th.
Thursday evening.
Thursday evening. Task Force has done a lot of terrific work. I've been fortunate enough to be able to visit with the committee as a liaison with Alice a number of times. A very complicated, just getting the chicken in the cage is just really a tricky problem. And they've done a lot of work in getting it organized. I think the town's it's going to be terrific because it's going to give us a way to, I think, systematically think about our energy future. So I hope folks will come out and not only listen to what they put together, but provide their input.
So we can expect at that meeting that there'll be preliminary recommendations and the thought process behind them they broke out into 5 different subgroups, taking a chunk of this to study and analyze before coming up with some basic recommendations. And I think this will be the first time the public will have them put on that, other than the committed public who have been coming to every single one of the meetings. It's a great committee doing hard work.
It's a great committee doing excellent
To meet their
work.
deadline, they've also upped their meeting schedule to weekly.
Nice.
Yeah, they've just been busy folks.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So, committee liaison reports?
Just a real quick one. At our next HATS meeting, which I believe is next Thursday evening, we have Massachusetts Transportation Secretary Stephanie Pollock joining us. So let me know if you're interested or if you have questions. Next Thursday for HATS. Yeah, it's in Lincoln Town Hall.
Yep.
So it's going to be exciting.
Terrific.
I'd like to have a word or two with Ms. Pollock. This is the 15th. I'm going to add that to my calendar. Thursday,
Alice, do you have liaison?
I think it's
I
the
do.
27th.
Oh, 27th.
Yeah.
There are 2 things that I just want to mention, maybe 3 things. The Ball Benson barn has come up before this board on numerous occasions, and I just want everyone to know that at every historical commission meeting, they are continuing to review and move towards siting and rebuilding the Ball Benson barn. Last night was no exception, or this past meeting was no exception, where they talked again about, they have a historic architect looking at, or an architect who's specializes in historic woods and preservation, looking at the quality of the woods that have been in storage for all these years to see whether the integrity is such that the barn can be rebuilt. I also just want to mention that this is the second time that we have seen great coordination between the schools and our committees. The Rivers Revolutions group have been working for the last number of months reviewing the history of Concord's Peter Robbins and Peter Hutchinson. And they've come to learn after working in the archives and at the library and doing some research through the town that our signage is probably incorrect the way it's posted. That the history, it's time for us to correct the history to what is known about both Peter Robbins and Peter Hutchinson. And they are making some recommendations to language that would set the record straight on who these valuable black historians are.
Substantively?
They are. I think in one of the particular recommendations, one of the signs refers to Peter Robbins as having been a slave. He wasn't. He was a free black man. So they did some research about when, and dates were off by as many as 3 to 5 years.
Oh.
So I can't actually recall all the details, because my notes aren't great, but there's enough. They've done a lot of really good work. And I really appreciate that program integrating
Fun
so well
project.
with the town committees. I think they're great. It's really great to have them working on this project. And they've also helped with the White Pond Advisory Committee and bringing awareness to the pond. And I just want to mention, in your town manager report, you had mentioned about the monopoles going up. And I just want to mention that that Sheldon Hines, who is a longtime advocate working on poles and EMFs, came to the last meeting of the Historical Commission and has also asked about potentially coming before this board, to talk about our role in these monopoles. He took it upon residents that are within a half-mile radius of the poles where it would be in the view shed. And I think his activities are probably welcomed by those in the neighborhood. So I just wanted to mention that he's working to bring word that the public comment period closes October 28th, and that people should entertain submitting a letter of concern if that is a concern of theirs.
And do we know where these monopoles physically?
Yeah.
They've sent maps.
In the emails we got.
And
there's a
they've
map.
applied also with other towns
In Lincoln.
up the Fitchburg
The
line.
problem with Lincoln, I think Lincoln was the first to alert us that they had
Yes.
problems with the number of poles and the location of them along the MBTA
It
right
kind
of
of
way.
went off the radar for a little bit.
Well, it came up once before, and it turned out there wasn't anything planned in Concord. It was a Lincoln
Right.
monopole.
Well, we heard of
And
yeah,
then
the plan was
came back.
surprise.
And there's nothing we can do.
I don't know. I saw in the Lincoln paper, I Googled it, and that Lincoln required them to refile their application because they had said the purpose of the polls was to control train braking and that sort of thing, and that wasn't really what it was for. I think it's for wireless, perhaps a commercial activity. So I did ask John Minty if it would make a difference if the polls were for passenger improvement of service to passengers, which perhaps we can't regulate them. But if it's just a commercial enterprise renting some of their space to wireless carriers, I don't know that the exemption still applies. If it's just so they can make money renting, So
How do we sort?
one thing we might find out, what did Lincoln ultimately do? Because they had their hearings in the spring. So I'll check with the town administrator there.
What's the deadline for
October 28th
28th?
is the last day for public comment on the proposed monopoles in Concord. So we can have.
And 74 feet is probably going to
We
be
don't have
above the tree
another
line.
meeting before the 20, we don't have another meeting before this.
No.
There definitely is no service.
Is the services limited on the train?
So I would entertain a motion, if you would be interested, to authorize the chair to write to the MBTA if in fact the town manager finds that there is reason for us to have some jurisdiction or oversight on this process.
That's a good idea. I would support. I would make a motion to that effect and see how it flies.
Okay.
And I would, you have a question? I would move that we authorize the chair to work with the town manager on identifying if there's any possibility for us to comment in the town's best interest on the placement of the monopoles in Concord. He has to do that in conjunction with the town manager.
Second.
Steve, do you have a concern?
No, not at all.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
for volunteering.
I'm going to delegate to the clerk. Committee report.
The Community Preservation Committee met on a couple of times, and reviewed the applications for funding. The available funds are $1,463,000. The application for funds were $2,815,000. And they've assigned to the individual members to go and look at the various applications and make a determination as to the priorities that they're going to be giving. And I believe they're meeting tomorrow night again. The public Public-Private Partnership
Can I interrupt
Committee.
you before you get
Yeah.
to another committee? Chris, when you and I met, I think it was 2 weeks ago, there was an issue of the board had expressed its preference for town projects. And there was a question of whether or not the committee had information about the preferences of the select board as opposed to just a set of.
So Tom asked me this question of me because the board had discussed it. What role the selectmen have historically played in this, and this year we followed the process we always have. Is that I asked the board, I provide the board a list of projects that town staff think you might be interested in, and the board identifies those projects among 10 or 15 that you believe to be priorities. This year it was 5, including Junction Village and several others. And so Marcia prepared those applications. Several others, including Rich Rain, the Sleepy Hollow application, and so forth. So then normally the board lets the chips fall at where they may, leaves it up to the committee to decide amongst the competing priorities. So Tom would ask the question: would the board typically now weigh in, and now that the applications are all in, and you can see the relative price of each project? And I responded that hasn't been our practice. You certainly could, but you haven't done. Usually, you've allowed the CPC to decide, knowing what the board's priorities are. If that makes sense.
It's kind of, I think, a little bit what point, if ever, do the select board give its priorities to them? They may not choose not to follow them, but should they have what our feelings are in terms of priorities? And part of that is, I think, a number of the higher solicitation amounts come from the list that the select board had recommended.
Well, I want to split hairs if I can.
Yeah.
Weighing in, I have no interest right now, but is that the same thing as making them aware that when you brought these to our attention, here's the ones we thought were higher priority for the town? I don't want to lobby them. I mean, they've got
Right.
hard work to do.
Good question. They may not know. They may not know. You had a public conversation about it, so they may be aware that of the 10 projects or so that the staff came up with, these 5 were the board's priorities. But you didn't consider them in the context of what other the Emerson umbrella and what other projects were being submitted because you didn't know what was under contemplation. So it's a fair question to ask. Now that you know everything that's been applied for.
No, I don't. That's not my interest. My interest is not, there's an umbrella where ours are more important than that. That's not. It's of the ones they've got from the town, making sure they know which of those
Right.
we thought
Yeah.
were
Right,
important.
they have that. They have the ones,
That's
our
what I was-
recommendations
that's what I
of
was
the
asking.
town's projects.
Do they
Don't know
of
if
the 10
it's been
projects?
conveyed. I conveyed that to the staff. I don't know if I conveyed
So
it to the CPC.
that's my question, is of the
let's
projects
make sure
submitted
that-
by the town, do
Okay.
they know
So we
our
can-
preference? That's all I want to do.
Right.
Okay.
I think there is an issue that's been raised to me before, which could be more in line with what you were talking about, and that is, people have expressed concern to me that the original intent of this was aimed more at town projects, and a continuing concern about what percentage of the CPA funding actually goes to town projects as opposed to a perfectly good project in the town. I think but that is going to have to be something for some other discussion. So could you make sure that
Yes,
they
I will.
know of the
I'll
10?
Share with
these
them the
were
minutes
our-
from your discussion in
Perfect.
August, I think it was.
Perfect.
Great.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I think that's helpful. Because there was some, that was not a committee discussion. Dee, at the end of it, came up to me and kind of asked about it, and I didn't know, so. The Public-Private Partnership Committee has met a couple of times, both on the 5th of October and on the 13th, and they're moving ahead, I think, fairly rapidly based upon input that they had from the public hearing. They are intending to keep to the timetable of a final public hearing in December and a final report by the first of the year, and hoping to get public input. I think they found that very helpful. But that seems to be moving along at a good clip now. And the Committee on Disabilities met somewhat of a number of the same discussions, access to the Beatty Pool, and there was a good discussion about some of the restrictions of coming up with that. Apparently they need only $8,000 for one modification, but coming up with those funds, it's not as simple as just allocating $8,000 to them. Bank of America, there's an access to the door that has been going back and forth. Apparently it works sometimes and other times doesn't. You can get out, but you can't get in. So they're still working with Bank of America on that. And there were a couple of the Concord Integrated Preschool came and gave a presentation of what they're doing, and they were seeking a letter of support for CPA funding. And there was a discussion of problems at the Neshoba Brooks Bakery, the parking, apparently, that...
That's something late this
I think there were some photographs that they showed, and there's going to be some discussion with the police chief in terms of what can be done to try to help on that. And their next meeting is going to be on November the 2nd at 9 a.m. And then the Bruce Friedman Rail Trail had an update, and they're getting ready for the bidding coming in and the 25% review, and they're moving forward, and it's quite exciting. I think that's seeing that movement going and having gotten through all the easements and all the rest that were required. So,
Driving down 2A, you can see it moving through.
Good.
So that's
Jen?
I have a number of updates. I've been following various applications through both the Planning Board and NRC process, such as the Concord Museum and the Middlesex Schools, new buildings. There's nothing particularly controversial. It's just an interesting way to follow progress in Concord. Probably the two more pertinent committees are the Long Range Planning Committee, which has been meeting diligently. Our one hiccup has been that we issued our RFP and received no bids, and so we're going back to look at reissuing that with some additions, and it wouldn't shock me if one of our issues was the price tag that we were trying to request that the bidders come in at, so we may see that again. And then in the proliferation of public hearings, we have a Estabrook Woods Study Committee public hearing on the 24th of October here, here in the townhouse. And that has also been meeting weekly to prepare its list of recommendations. The Select Board has some requests to it to study both the legal position of the town and make recommendations, as well as to work with the trustees of reservation to determine the feasibility and progress and process for constructing a parking lot for Punkatassett. Those were requests made by the study committee. I believe they were put on the website today. And that is another committee of really heartfelt individuals in Concord who have done a really impressive job of both putting forth issues, listening to each other, as well as the public as they've come. So I encourage anybody with an interest to come to the 24th.
Thank you. Very quickly, met with Hugh Cargill Trust. The big issue they had was beginning to develop processes for managing the silent fund. You might remember that, so they're well on their met with Alice Van Dusen, who's been doing it along with Bruce for years. Met on Wednesday with Tuesday, the school committee. Heard from budget presentation. On Wednesday, the light plant. I'd say they're getting ready for what is their November rate setting meeting, which sounds like it should be a lot of fun. So they've been doing that. And then on Thursday, I was able to attend the finance committee meeting where we heard a presentation from the schools, both the high school and the public schools. It was a nice job, and they're part of their guidelines process, of course. A group of people from the Merrimack Valley Visitor Bureau at the Concord Museum, about 30 people who were here, mostly I would say business people, food, restaurants, hotel people in Concord. Corey Atkins was there, along with other representatives, Jamie Eldridge, for example. That was pretty good. And Saturday morning, I went to the open house at Wright Tavern. So I think they're going to have another one of those. You should go over there. It's first floor now is signed a lease with the museum. And there's nothing really but rooms there now. They haven't got anything up, but they're going to turn it into a place that people can go, and I think
Fabulous.
Absolutely fabulous. Yeah. So that's pretty good. Two very quick things. I'd asked Chris, and he has worked with his directors that on our next meeting on the 31st, I don't know if Rich Raines and Alan are coming. I don't know.
I don't know either. I have asked Rich if he could arrange to attend your next meeting to discuss water issues. I haven't
water. What are we? A couple of issues. Where are we on the drought and what's going on and all that? What else might we do to make people more aware of these kind of things? How could we help? Are we conserving as effectively as we should? I think water's been.
Can they also provide clarification on private wells versus public water, and just what our policy is?
I did learn about that. We do not currently have any jurisdiction over private wells. Right. We could, as a town, enact a bylaw to give us jurisdiction over private wells. The wrinkle, as far as I know, in that is that you would have to undertake some geological work in order to determine where the well water is actually coming from to ensure that it's coming from something that you have jurisdiction over. Right.
So a connection to an aquifer that would be connected to one of our other wells.
And some towns have done
about irrigation wells, not private drinking water wells. Is that what you're saying? We're talking strictly about irrigation wells?
I wasn't talking specifically about I wasn't making a distinction.
So when I think
that applies to drinking or
irrigation. There is a distinction to be made, and I believe the town does have some jurisdiction over irrigation wells, because I remember that the town has a requirement that there be water sensors. If it's raining, they don't automatically go on, and that was part of a requirement that the town has in a bylaw. If you're going to install an irrigation well, it has to have a humidity or moisture sensor.
Yeah.
So that's different than private drinking water wells, which the town does not have jurisdiction over.
No sensor on that.
Sounds like we need clarity.
So a lot of stuff, and just in the same water thing, we're arranging a walkthrough with the Acton Selectmen.
Yes.
Magog, I think, on the 31st. No?
The town manager just responded by email on he prefers the 28th, Friday the 28th at 10.
Friday the 28th at 10?
Works best for Acton.
Works best for us.
Friday the 28th
I can't do it then. I have
We've got visitors from Nanai.
I have Nanai here all day, so I can't do that. So I'm looking for a volunteer.
I could do it as long as we're out of the Sierra.
Yeah. Friday, October 28th in the morning is what you're saying?
Yes, at the site. It's at 10 a.m. Let me just say, Alan offered either Friday the 28th or Monday the 31st. Steve responded that the Friday worked best for the Acton Select Board, so at 10. So it hasn't been confirmed yet, but right now it looks like.
That's too bad.
what
I
it is.
wanted to go to that. But I
Will that
can't.
be a posted meeting?
Yeah, it'll be a posted site visit,
I would
which I
like to
think
go.
means they can't discuss
So who
it, but
wants
they
to
can ask
go?
questions.
I'd like to go if I can. Go.
Okay, so we don't need to post it, just two
I
go.
would suggest that you do it as a,
Yeah.
as a posted site visit.
The 28th,
That's probably the right thing.
Friday, 10/28, at 10 a.m. at the Nagog Pond
Pond.
facility in Acton.
So, okay, and then on November 28th, I've invited the Concord Museum to come talk to us about their plans, so we know exactly what's going on. And we get a chance to talk about it a little bit. And in inviting Ms. Burke, who was delighted to come, she raised an issue with me. So the issue that was on her mind were sidewalks and handicap access to the museum for if somebody's here in town. And I mean, I don't know anything about it except that intersection over there is probably pretty tricky.
And my understanding is it's a good, maybe we'll find out from Rich beforehand. I believe sidewalks, improved sidewalks on Cambridge Turnpike is included as part of.
Could be. I think they were talking, as I understood her, they were talking not just about along the front of but if you were here in town,
Right,
how would you
Getting
get there
there.
from here? Because there's, along part of Haywood Meadow, there are no sidewalks. The sidewalks are on the other
On
side.
the opposite side, yeah, there is, and I think that
kind of,
has been broached with, I don't know if it's the Historical Commission or the HDC did not favor sidewalks on both sides. Anyway, okay, we can hear what they have to say.
she raised the issue, I said, we'll be more than happy to talk about
Will
it.
the accessibility be hard from where the sidewalk is now?
Yeah. All right, committee,
Just one word here.
of
Sorry.
course.
I just want to commend the Concord Public Works for an amazing, this is about my 10th consecutive year volunteering at the drop-off swap-off. And I am amazed at what it takes to marshal as many volunteers as they have. I think the numbers were down this year, maybe around 750 cars. That's still a lot of cars.
It's pretty crowded when I drove by.
It was, they do an amazing job. You can take everything, recycling everything, building a little piece of art in front of, the Kais Road. It's really great. So I have to commend them. Rod was there the entire time.
Pass that on, thank
It
you.
was great.
Well, and just to follow on,
And the
before
police
that, a
department.
couple of weeks before that, they had a hazardous waste recycling day too, which I heard was a huge success.
I neglected to just mention that there's going to be a joint meeting with the Library Corporation and the Concord Free Public Library to discuss library planning on the 19th between 5:30 and 7 at the townhouse. So if anybody's interested in that,
October 19th?
This is the corporation and the library committee.
And this is this week.
this week,
It's in this room.
Wednesday night evening here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, committee appointments.
I move to appoint Nancy Kerr of 25 Upland Road to the Polystyrene Education and Outreach Committee for a term to expire January 2017. Also move to appoint Christopher Buck of 31 Damon Street to the Polystyrene Education and Outreach Committee for a term to expire January 17.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
That
Committee-
committee is almost seated, I think, and we will have confirmation by tomorrow night if we have a full committee.
Woo-hoo. Committee reappointments.
I move to reappoint Susan Bates of 160 Arena Terrace to the Personnel Board for a term to expire May 31st, 2019. This will be her third term. And we, as a board, must cite 3 reasons for this.
And the reason we would cite is her expertise
Yep.
on this committee, so that satisfies Section 10.
Absolutely.
Is that a motion?
It is a motion.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 20. I would entertain a motion to move to adjourn to executive session, consider matters of land acquisition, and not to reconvene to open meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor? This is a roll call vote.
Second and I.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.